Emily had always believed she understood silence. Before her divorce, silence meant peace. Late night reading, the gentle hum of suburban evenings. But after the divorce, the silence inside her home changed completely. It no longer sounded peaceful. It felt like an empty room after a long party, like a song that suddenly stopped before the last note. Her house in Portland had once been warm, full of footsteps, casual conversations, and the small familiar noises of a family. Now it felt as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to return that she wasn't sure would ever come back. She spent her days trying to keep herself busy. Work, chores, errands, anything to avoid thinking. She told friends she was doing fine, that the divorce had been mutual, that she and her ex-husband, Daniel, were wishing each other well. But inside, she felt like someone had unplugged a lamp in the middle of her life, leaving half of it in shadow. Then, one rainy evening that carried the smell of wet pavement and pine trees, her phone rang. She almost let it go to voicemail, but something made her pick it up. Seeing the name on the screen made her sit up. Straighter. Michael. Her stepson. She hadn't spoken to him much since the divorce. He'd moved out years ago, busy with work and school. But she had always loved him like her own. He had always been the polite, thoughtful one, the kid who washed the dishes without being asked, who remembered her birthday when even his father forgot. She answered quickly, "Michael, everything okay?" There was a long pause before he spoke, and she could hear the strain in his voice. "Emily, I hate to ask this, but I need a place to stay for a while. Can I come home?" The word home made her chest tighten. She didn't know if she still had the right to call it his home, especially after everything that had happened between her and his father. But there was no hesitation in her heart. "Yes," she said quietly. "Of course. You can stay as long as you need." She expected him to sound relieved. But there was something more in his voice, something that made her wonder what he was carrying. "Thank you. I'll be there soon." When the call ended, she stood still for a moment, listening to the rain tap the windows like soft fingers. Her mind raced. She hurried from room to room, cleaning a place that was already spotless, adjusting pillows, lighting a few warm lamps. She wasn't nervous exactly, but she felt something she hadn't felt in months, a reason to breathe a little deeper. Michael arrived an hour later, suitcase in hand, water in his hair from the rain. He looked older than she remembered. Taller, broader, with a calm seriousness in his eyes she hadn't seen before. He used to have that youthful, restless energy. But now he looked like someone who had seen enough of the world to lose that careless shine. Emily smiled and stepped aside. "Come in. Let me take your bag." He shook his head. "It's okay. I've got it." His voice was warm, gentle, but there was something tired behind it. They exchanged the kind of hug that felt both familiar and strange. He smelled like cold rain and travel, and Emily felt a sudden rush of memories, him bringing home school projects. Laughing in the kitchen, the three of them decorating the holiday tree together. For a moment she wondered how their lives had changed so quickly, and why they were both here now, starting something unexpected. They talked for a few minutes as she made him tea. Simple things, neutral things. How was work? How was his move? Did he eat on the way? But beneath their words lived a quiet understanding. They were both avoiding the topic of the divorce. Over the next few days, the house changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough that Emily began to feel it in her heartbeat. She would wake up and hear cupboards opening in the kitchen, soft footsteps of someone else living in the same space. She felt less alone, even without speaking. Michael tried to keep things light. He carried the groceries before she asked, fixed the dripping sink she had ignored for months, and helped her organize the garage like it was a natural part of his day. His presence made every corner of the house feel less empty, as if life had returned in small, gentle waves. But the strangest part was how easy it felt being around him again. She had always known him as her stepson, kind, responsible, protective. But now he was a grown man with his own calm energy, someone who carried himself with steady confidence. Sometimes, when he talked, she forgot he wasn't that awkward teenager she once helped raise. He had changed. And in a quiet corner of her heart, she realized she had too. One afternoon, they found themselves sitting on opposite sides of the kitchen table. She was sorting mail. He was drinking coffee. Nothing dramatic. But every few minutes, she felt his eyes on her, warm, observant, almost careful. She looked up once and caught him. He didn't look away. His smile was small, a little sad, a little understanding. The kind of smile that told her he saw more than she was saying. "Emily," he said softly, "you don't have to act strong around me." The words cracked something inside her. She looked down quickly, pretending to focus on a bill that didn't matter. "I'm not acting," she whispered, though both of them knew she was. He didn't push her, and she was grateful for that. He simply stood up, took the mail from her hands, and said, "Let me help." Another evening, they sat in the living room watching television. There was nothing romantic or close about it, just two people sharing a couch in a quiet home. But she felt the tension between them shift, like invisible strings pulling them into a new, uncertain space. She tried to tell herself. She was imagining it. He was her stepson. He was just being kind because she was alone. But sometimes the way he looked at her didn't feel like obligation. It felt like something else. A gentle awareness. A warmth that traveled through the air between them, unspoken. One night, the sky outside turned a deep shade of blue, almost black, and the city lights in the distance shimmered like small stars. Emily stepped out onto the porch, enjoying the cold air. Michael joined her a minute later, hands in his pockets. Shoulders relaxed, they stood side by side, watching the night in silence. The quiet between them wasn't heavy this time. It was full, like there were words hovering near the surface, waiting to be spoken. After a long pause, he said, "I didn't just come back because I needed a place." Emily turned her head slightly, unsure where the moment was going. "I came back because I didn't want you to go through all this alone." Breath caught. She felt the words sink into a part of her heart she had tried to keep locked. Before she could respond, he continued, "I know you won't say it, but I know you're hurting. And I couldn't just stay away." Emily tried to speak, but no words came. She didn't know if he meant it as a son-like concern or something deeper. She didn't know if she wanted it to mean something deeper. All she knew was the air around them felt different, charged with emotion she wasn't prepared for. She finally managed, "Michael, you didn't have to worry about me like that." He smiled softly. "Maybe not, but I did anyway." Then, as if he realized he had said too much, he stepped back and headed inside. "Good night, Emily." She stood alone on the porch, listening to the distant traffic and the soft rustle of trees. Feeling the weight of his words press into her chest, something had changed. Not loudly, not suddenly, but unmistakably. She knew the house wasn't the only thing. Waking up again, her heart was too, and she had no idea where that would lead. The first weeks after Michael moved back in had settled into a rhythm neither of them had expected. Emily woke up to the faint sounds of him moving around the kitchen, the clatter of dishes being rinsed, the hum of the coffee machine. She tried to ignore the warmth that came with those sounds, telling herself he was just being polite, just being thoughtful as he always had been. But deep down, she knew there was something more growing quietly between them, something that neither wanted to name yet. Michael adapted to the house quickly, carrying himself like he belonged there, as if returning to his old life felt natural. He helped around the house without being asked, fixed little things she had ignored for months, and sometimes even prepared a meal. Emily caught herself watching him sometimes, noticing the way his shoulders relaxed when he thought no one was looking, or the small smile that crossed his face when he realized she had appreciated something he did. Those small moments made her heart twist in ways she couldn't quite understand. They didn't speak about the past, or the divorce, or the old life that had ended. Instead, their conversations were easy, sometimes playful, sometimes thoughtful. Michael asked about her work, about the small neighborhood things she cared for, about books she had recently read. She found herself opening up to him in ways she hadn't with anyone else. He listened without judgment, without interruptions. "Okay." And she felt safe in a way she hadn't for months. One afternoon, they found themselves in the living room, snow falling lightly outside the window. The city lights shimmered in the distance, casting faint reflections across the hardwood floor. Michael had suggested they put up the small Christmas tree she had kept in storage. It was a tradition they had once shared when he was younger, and Emily had almost forgotten how comforting it could feel as they set the tree in its stand, untangled strings of lights and hung ornaments together. There was a quiet intimacy in the air. No words were spoken for several minutes, just the soft hum of activity and the occasional clink of glass ornaments. When their hands brushed while hanging a particularly heavy ornament, a shock ran through Emily that surprised her. She looked away quickly, pretending she hadn't noticed. But she felt the heat rising to her cheeks. Michael placed the ornament carefully and stepped back, glancing at her with a subtle curiosity. His eyes were warm and gentle, and for a moment the room seemed to shrink to just the two of them. Emily felt her pulse quicken, and for the first time since he had returned, she wasn't sure what to say. "Emily, things feel different now," he said softly, his voice steady, careful. Her chest tightened. She wanted to deny it, to say it was nothing, but the truth had a way of slipping past her lips. "I don't know what this is," she whispered, barely audible. "I just know it scares me." He nodded, acknowledging her fear without trying to push it away. "It scares me too," he admitted, "but I care about you. I've always cared about you." Emily looked down at the tree, at the small lights flickering in the dim room. She felt emotions she hadn't expected: longing, confusion, and something that felt like hope. She didn't respond immediately because she wasn't sure how to. The words hung in the air, heavier than either of them had intended. And yet they felt natural, unavoidable. For the next few days, the house felt different. There was a warmth now that hadn't been there since Michael's father had left. It's an undercurrent of connection that pulsed quietly between them. Emily noticed the small ways he paid attention to her, bringing her tea just the way she liked it, leaving little notes on the counter when she had a busy morning, asking how she slept without expecting a long answer. She tried to dismiss it, telling herself it was simply Michael being thoughtful. But deep inside she knew it was more than that. One evening, as they were sitting together on the porch, a soft rain falling around them, Emily realized she was looking at him differently than she had before. His hair was damp, sticking slightly to his forehead, his eyes reflecting the dim porch lights and the raindrops on the railing. He looked vulnerable in a way that made her want to reach out, and strong in a way that made her feel safe. She caught herself leaning slightly closer without realizing it. Michael spoke before she could gather her thoughts. "Emily, I know this is complicated. I know we're in a situation that feels strange, but I can't pretend I don't feel something when I'm around you." Emily's breath hitched. She wanted to respond, to tell him she felt it too, but the words were lodged in her throat. Instead, she nodded, hoping her silence would convey what she could not say aloud. He reached out, lightly touching her hand. The contact was brief, but electric. Emily felt a rush of emotions: fear, excitement, longing, all tangled together. She pulled her hand back slightly, not because she wanted to, but because she needed to process the intensity of the moment. "I think we both need time," she whispered, finally finding her voice. "Time to understand what this is." Michael didn't argue. He simply nodded, his gaze steady on her face. "I can wait," he said softly. "As long as we're honest with each other, I can wait." That night, Emily lay in bed listening to the quiet house. She thought about Michael's words, about the way he looked at her, and about the strange, heavy warmth that had settled in her chest. She realized the house no longer felt empty. It was alive again, but in a different way, one that made her heart ache and hope at the same time. The next morning, they moved through their routine, but the air between them had shifted. There was an unspoken understanding now, a subtle tension that neither could ignore. Michael's presence was comforting, but it also made her aware of her own desires, her own loneliness, and her own heart's vulnerability. They spent hours together over the following week, cooking meals, cleaning the house, and even doing small projects in the garden. Every shared task became a quiet opportunity to connect, to notice little things about each other. Michael laughed more freely now, and Emily found herself smiling at his jokes, feeling warmth spread through her chest. The moments felt fleeting and delicate, as if they existed in a space between the past and the future. Fragile yet undeniable. One afternoon, while arranging books on a shelf, Michael paused and looked at her. "Emily, I've always admired how strong you are," he said. "Even when everything fell apart, you kept going. I I've always respected that." Emily felt a lump in her throat. She had never thought of herself as particularly strong, only surviving. But hearing him say it made her feel seen in a way that surprised her. She wanted to respond to tell him how much it meant, but she simply nodded, letting the silence speak for her. The days passed and the connection between them deepened. Emily realized she was thinking of him constantly, his small gestures, his voice, his presence. She felt a sense of longing she hadn't expected, and yet it was wrapped in comfort, not danger. Michael's presence filled her life with color again, reminding her of the joy that had been absent since her divorce. One evening, as snow fell softly outside and the city lights glimmered in the distance, they sat together in the living room, wrapped in blankets, sipping hot chocolate. Michael reached out, lightly brushing a strand of hair from Emily's face. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into the touch, feeling the quiet intensity of their connection. "I don't want to rush anything," Kay said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. I want you to know that being here with you matters. More than I can say." Emily's heart ached with emotion. She wanted to tell him she felt the same, that she had been waiting for something like this without realizing it. But the words felt too fragile, too new. Instead, she rested her hand near his on the blanket, letting the contact speak for her. The snow fell heavier outside, blanketing the city in quiet white. Inside, Emily and Michael sat together, feeling the warmth between them grow slowly, tenderly. The house was alive with a new energy, one that neither had fully understood, but both welcomed. It was a beginning, a slow unfolding of emotions neither had expected. But both were ready to explore. Emily realized that her life had changed in ways she couldn't have predicted. She had lost one chapter, yes, but in its place, a new one was quietly taking shape. Michael's return had brought back more than companionship. It had brought hope, warmth, and the possibility of love that was deep, respectful, and gentle. By the end of the week, they both knew that something significant was forming between them. It wasn't a reckless or hurried romance, but a careful, growing bond built on trust, understanding, and shared history. Every glance, every touch, every shared moment added layers to their connection. Emily understood that whatever this new chapter became, it would not erase the past, but it would give them both a chance to experience life anew together, yet respectfully, with hearts open and cautious. And as she went to bed that night, listening to the quiet hum of the city and the soft creak of the house settling, she realized she no longer felt alone. The house was alive again. Her heart was awake again. And whatever came next, she was ready to face it not with fear, but with the fragile, thrilling hope of love slowly finding its way back into her life.